Hi, I'm Carrie Vanston, and I am the Ambassador Officer for Association of Corporate Growth in Austin, San Antonio, and I'm also the CEO of the Alligator Wrangler. CEASAR is a program that we've put together at ACG for corporate executives from Austin, San Antonio, to kind of just give executives and business owners, C-suite executives, CEOs, and business owners a chance to discuss common challenges and share solutions in a peer-friendly space. Today, our special guest is Brett Hurt. He's the CEO and co-founder of data.world and founder of Hurt Family Investments. And I'll give a little bit more of an introduction right before he speaks. We thank very much our annual chapter sponsors, Weaver, Dicoma, Insperity, and Higher Better. The CEASAR event agenda today, first we'll introduce each other. First I'll introduce Susan, who will talk a little bit about ACG, and then we'll have just a quick round of introductions. Then Brett will discuss and speak about culture and COVID, and then we'll have questions and discussion and networking at the end. And this session will be included, will be recorded, and you can open the chat box and put your contact information in there, and then we'll share anything in the chat box later and send it to you. Save the date. 2 weeks from now, 2 weeks after the CEASAR Roundtable, we always have a mastermind, and that will be on September 15th. This is just a chance to really kind of dive into things deeper. Everybody gets a chance to kind of share what's going on with them, their challenges, and their triumphs. So I hope you'll join us for that. Okay, let me get off of the share. So Susan Vaughn is our executive vice president of ACG, and she's going to tell you a little bit about ACG.
Thank you, Carrie. Thank you for moderating, and thank you, Sarah, for hosting us. I think that a lot of you are familiar with ACG, and about half of you may be members, but for those of you who aren't and maybe not familiar, ACG is a global organization of about 90,000 members. Established back in 1954, and it is an ecosystem largely dedicated to middle market growth. And by ecosystem, I mean it is a demographic that includes private equity, venture capital, intermediaries, investment bankers, other lenders, attorneys, accountants, service providers, and the company leaders themselves. And so that makes a complete circle of support for the middle market companies that we are all either involved in or providing services to. And it's a wonderful, wonderful resource. There's a lot of values to membership, not the least of which is networking like we're doing right now. There's a lot of wonderful content, and when we are meeting in person, we have amazing speakers like Brett Hurt, and more than that, amazing opportunities to network and draw from each other's expertise. So right now, during these unusual times when everyone is forced to be online, we've had the opportunity to really step up and provide some extra opportunities to gather and to learn and to connect. And Sarah, are there any upcoming events that I'm not thinking of that we might want to mention?
Yes, actually, there is going to be a global member summit in November. So that is going to be open only to members. We had one in June and it was fantastic. So they're going to do it again in November. So good reason to join.
Yes, it is a good reason to join, and membership is a good value right now. I believe aren't there some discounts? I saw something come across my radar about referrals.
Yeah, if you're a current member and you refer to people who then become members, you get your renewal for free.
Yeah. All right. Well, any of you who are members, keep that in mind. And of course, even if there weren't discounts, I think any of us who are members know the value of being able to connect with all these individuals locally and across the U.S. We have direct contact through the directory. We have access to PitchBook. We have amazing speakers, webinars, all kinds of resources such as Middle Market Growth Magazine and Growth TV. So you know, I hope that any of you that aren't members will consider joining. It's a great organization. Carrie, back to you.
Thank you, Susan. So I'll start the introductions and then I'll just call on people kind of going through my computer here. I'm Carrie Vanston. I'm the CEO of the Alligator Wrangler. I help people that are up to their necks in alligators. I help them increase their energy and their mindset and their leadership levels so that they can achieve their goals quicker and with less stress. John, would you like to go?
Hi, John Spencer. I am with Clear Direction, VP of Sales Development. I'm a fractional VP of Sales, so I help small to medium companies, 5 to 50 million in revenue, put infrastructure in place, and then organize their sales team and take the load off the leadership to focus on their business instead of in their business. We see a lot of these folks ramp up. They need that outside help to come in, for C-level management. And then I offboard after we either elevate somebody internally or find somebody external to take over the leadership role.
Great, thank you, John. How about you, Andy?
Sure. Hi, I'm Andy Fogarasi, and hi, Carrie and team. I'm former CEO of PartsTree.com here in Austin, an e-commerce company. I started and grew to about 20 million. Sold my shares, and now I've refired up my consulting company, Austin Beta, kind of focusing on e-commerce and operations, helping mentor and kind of coach some startups and growth companies.
Great. Tanisha?
Oh, hi, I'm Tanisha Walter. I've been in banking for over 25 years now, and I'm with Merrill Lynch. I used to be a banking center manager for a couple different branches. Right now I'm on a team. I work with 3 different financial advisory teams with Merrill, and we look to help clients reach their financial needs and achieve their goals.
Thank you. Charu?
Unmute myself. Hi everyone. Thank you. Thanks, Gary. So I belong to a company. So I'm a founder owner of 2 corporations. One is InnoSec, which is innovative security. We work in the space of governance, risk compliance, information security consulting. We started with the focus on mid-size market, but we have clients from $1 billion all the way to $6 billion. So yes, we're getting some traction in that space. We are going to introduce a platform called Secure Written, which is an e-learning platform. We plan to go live within 3rd week of this month, September 20th or 21st. It's an international global platform. So we are trying to push all marketing and everything at this stage. Some of the folks here on this call are helping me too. So thank you very much, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Brad?
Hi, Brad Heath, CEO and founder of Vertex. We're an electronic manufacturing services company that helps customers with product design and development, as well as manufacturing the products, all the way through distribution to their customers. We're in 8 states and Mexico, and happy to be here.
Thank you. Welcome. Karen Kilroy?
Sure. Hi, I'm Karen with Kilroy Blockchain. We've been around here in Austin since 2016. We're an IBM partner. We won the IBM Watson Build Challenge in 2017. And right now we are in IBM's accelerator program, building a COVID-19 network on blockchain to help multiple parties get together and resolve the issues around controlling COVID-19. We're also involved in a big supply chain blockchain project.
Great, thank you. Christine? Oh, we don't see it. Can you turn yourself on live?
Yes, I'll turn myself on. Hello, everyone.
Oh, yay.
Christine Bryant. I am the founder and CEO of Gladiator Consulting. Company has been around since January of 2016. So happy anniversary, Karen. 2016 was a great year. We do fractional CMO business first marketing. And in the past 4.5 years, we've worked with about 60 different companies, typically startups and small businesses, usually under 10 million in revenue. We will occasionally go a little bit bigger than that. But It's a real pleasure to be part of this group, and really excited to hear what we're talking about today.
Great, thank you. Bill, Leek, we don't see your face. There you are.
That's because I still have my COVID haircut. I need to I need to get out of my house more often. Bill Leek, I run Apogee Results. It's a digital growth consultancy that endeavors to bring SEC quality digital talent to people who are looking to grow via Facebook and Google and Bing and all the other engines, and having fun with that. Actually, COVID has increased the awareness of folks that or exposed those folks who did not have their digital house in order, which is medium to long term a great thing for us. And I'm also using this time to launch a new venture using the talent of my shop as if it were venture capital. So having fun with that as well. Great to be here, and always great to get to listen to Brett Hurt.
Thank you, Bill. Rob?
Unmuted myself there. Hello, everybody. It's nice to see people, except my wife's upstairs. She's like, Rob, you need to go find some friends. So hopefully you're my new friends. But I was a owner of a manufacturing company. I sold the company about 15 months ago. So the company was named or called Dynamic Manufacturing Solutions. And unfortunately, I wasn't planning on selling the company. My partner got lymphoma. So we had to change our direction, change plans. So now I'm working for a company that bought us called Ultra Clean Technology. And that was actually my previous employer. So it's kind of an interesting dynamic. But we were very focused on manufacturing and very focused on building a leadership culture around the team that we had on staff. And it was a lot of fun. I'm sure in my future, I will do something similar to that. Right now, I'm working on processes and writing processes for the company I work for, which is, if you know me, that's definitely not where that's not my forte, but it's not a bad place to be during this period of time.
Great, thank you, Rob. Welcome. Susan?
Thank you, Carrie. Susan Vaughn, I'm with Insperity. I've been with Insperity going on 8 years now. Insperity is a national provider of outsourced HR and benefit solutions. So we help companies scale, grow, build HR infrastructure, technology, strategy, culture, all of the things A to Z under HR.
Great. Mac, hello. It's your turn to introduce yourself. We're just, everybody's introducing themselves. Yeah, there you go.
You hear me okay, everyone? Okay. Yeah, so my name is Mac, and I am an app developer, graphic designer, and all-around entrepreneur. I have my hands in a lot of different things, music, art, anything creative, pretty much.
Great, welcome. Sarah.
Hello all, I am Sarah Singer with ACG. If you have any questions regarding ACG, I'm the one to ask.
Great, thank you. I'd like to introduce Brett Hurt. He is the CEO and co-founder of data.world, and his company is making it easy for everyone, not just the data people, to get clear, accurate, fast answers. He's also the founder of Hurt Enterprise Investments, and they are involved with 80 startup companies and counting, mostly based in Austin. They are also invested in 24 VC funds and multiple philanthropic endeavors. Previously, Brett founded and led Bazaar Voice as CEO from 2005 to 2012. He led the company through a successful IPO, follow-up offering, and 2 acquisitions. And then prior to Bazaar Voice, Brett founded and led Core Metrics, which was acquired by IBM in 2010. I have a special place in my heart for Brett because he was our keynote when I was directing the Mini-Trends conferences, and he was our keynote in 2014. He went over great with the audiences, and we appreciated that so much. So I'm very excited to introduce Brett Hurt.
Great. Thanks so much, Carrie. And thanks everybody for tuning in. Thanks, Bill, for the kind words. I've known Bill for a long, long time. So Carrie, I thought I would just start out with just a few kind of framing remarks, and then we talked about doing this in terms of just Q&A. And this is a small group, and then just so I know where we're going with this, is there a roundtable portion of this as well that we're gonna share ideas with each other, or how do you want to do that portion later on?
We can do it however you want, Brett. I think Kurt Wilkins, he did it more of a mastermindy type thing. And then our last speaker, Chad McNair, did it more of he spoke for about 25 minutes on some subjects, and then we had discussion around it. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of up to you. We can have breakout groups at the end and talk about a couple of things if you'd like.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to learn from all of you as well, because I'm constantly talking with other CEOs during this time. I don't purport to have all the answers about how to manage culture through COVID-19, but I'll at least tell you what we're doing and where I think we're doing some things right. I mean, one of the things that's happened since this COVID-19 environment is we've won 5 annual Best Place to Work awards in Austin. We actually won a top 3 this year, which kind of blew me away, because this is the most challenging environment I've been in since the Great Recession. And one of the things that happened recently, which is pretty awesome, is that we do a program called Resilient Teams, which is an assessment. There's a company named Resilient Teams, but it's an assessment which benchmarks your team against other companies and other similar sized teams. And our executive team just got the best ranking we've ever got on that during this time, which really also kind of blew me away, because look, I've never managed a company from behind my computer screen like this. I've always managed in person. We've been working from home at data.world since March. And I'm very used to motivating people in person, to managing in person. You know, I've been a successful entrepreneur. This is my 6th business. So for us doing it like this for the first time in my career, it's been different. It's been challenging. I'm sure all of you would say the same in terms of your companies. But there's been some real silver linings on that too. The obvious ones being, you know, seeing family more and not traveling all the time, and, you know, getting sick a lot less. As a matter of fact, I don't think I've been sick at all this year. I don't think I've even caught a cold this year, just because, you know, of all the distancing and everything else, and not taking those plane flights. But, you know, from a macro perspective, I can tell you that culturally, this is a time where I feel like I've had to lean in more as a leader than in any other period since the Great Recession. And so what does that mean to really lean in? It means a tremendous amount of communication and fostering communication as a leader. A lot of transparency with our team. This is a time where people are, you know, really nervous. I mean, they're seeing a lot of their friends get let go at companies. A lot of people have, you know, gone from this standpoint of, you know, seeing a lot of people switch jobs to just being thankful to have their job. All that's happened in the past, you know, 6 months. And it's also a very tough time from a focus perspective, because we're on the cusp of a very consequential election season. And, you know, as a country, we're in a real bind here. I mean, we're the country in the developed world that's frankly doing the worst on COVID-19. And that's a huge distraction to everybody. From a news media perspective, from an actual perspective. I mean, I was just on a long walk this morning with one of our investors, and he told me that one of our mutual friends, who's a very prominent CEO here in the Texas area, sister is right now on ICU on a ventilator. And, you know, that's got to be a massive distraction and horrible happening in his life. And his sister's in her 40s. So it even affects like people that are very, very healthy, that are young, although it definitely affects people that are much older. So all that is the backdrop of what's happening that distracts from great company culture. You know, people seeing their loved ones get sick, people seeing their friends get let go at companies, people seeing some businesses, you know, through no fault of their own, you know, crashing. You know, if you're in the restaurant business, you're in the hotel business, you're in the travel business of any kind, there's really, you're really in a bind right now. And so that's kind of the backdrop of the environment that we've been operating. As far as data.world is concerned as a company, I was very, very scared going into this just as a leader. You know, I've been an entrepreneur for a long time. So I've been through crises. You know, I led Core Metrics through the dot-com bust and then 9/11. I led Bazaar Voice through the Great Recession, where we thought the whole financial system was going to collapse and maybe, you know, we're going to go into a Great Depression. And now I'm leading data.world through a global pandemic. So I'm no stranger to crisis, but the added challenge of doing all this from home is different, you know, not being together in person. It has actually strangely been good for our business. I remember going into this telling my wife, I don't know if this is going to be horrible for our business and we're going to be deeply affected by it and have to let go of people, or if this is going to be an accelerant for our business. It's actually overall been an accelerant for our business, and I don't take that for granted at all. I feel very lucky that that's the case, and it's because data.world really helps foster remote work. It helps foster people collaborating on all types of data and analysis inside of companies, and our customers have been, their usage of us has been growing exponentially during this period. So if you look at the charts on, you know, our paid users and adoption within our customer base, it's been going up and to the right. And I don't take that for granted at all. And I frankly feel like that's very, very fortunate and very lucky in this type of environment. But as a CEO, the #1 cultural principle for managing through this time, and I really do want to learn from all of you, has been communication, communication, communication. One of the things that we do very uniquely here, and we haven't stopped during this period, is every time I have a board meeting, I present the board deck to our entire company. I've done that since the beginning of data.world. I've done that since the pandemic hit. Continue to do that, I should say. And what it does is it provides a level of transparency in the company where everybody knows exactly how things are going. They see the same material that our board of directors does. Another thing that's worked really well culturally during this time is we have complete transparency across the company on OKRs. This is the way that Google has managed from the beginning. John Doerr, who was one of the original general partners at Kleiner Perkins and backed Google and served on their board since the beginning, educated Larry and Sergey on OKRs. There's a great TED Talk where John talks about OKRs that happened recently, and he came out with a book on it. But we've managed data.world on OKRs for about half of our existence. We've been around for 5 years, so about the past 2.5 years. That's worked incredibly well during this period because it gives us very measurable objectives that that everybody can see transparently how everybody else is doing inside the company, and a lot of those objectives cross teams. So that's been a really helpful mainstay during this period to keep everybody on the same page. And you know, it's part of my nervousness going into this period again was not being able to manage in person, see people in person all the time, motivate in person. But the OKR framework we've had in place for the last 2.5 years has made this period of time one where we're very connected and staying very much on task. And I think that work has been a welcome distraction from some of the crazy stuff happening in the world right now, from, you know, the protest and you know, just racial tensions overall, to the election, to the wildfires happening, to the hurricane that just passed through, and just so many other things, you know, hitting us at the same time. One of the things that has been really interesting to me about this period is that going into this, you would think that there would be a possibility that people would work a lot less, that everybody would be binging Netflix and everything else, and wouldn't be as motivated as seeing each other in person, and that there would be more kind of slacking off at work. That's been the opposite. As a matter of fact, at data.world, what we've had to really be careful of is managing people not to burn out, because that separation between home life and work life now is just one big blur. I personally worked for around 80 hours a week on data.world since March, since going into this period. And that level of intensity has led to, and by the way, I've heard this from the CEO of Indeed, from the CEO of WP Engine, from many other CEOs that I talk to around town, where I share cultural ideas managing through this period. So that's actually led us to have to do things like make sure that everybody's taking off at least, you know, a couple of days a month. And for the first time in our company's history, we've had unlimited vacation policy from the beginning, meaning we trust you to take the right amount of vacation that you need to refuel and manage your own family situation. And you know, different people have different needs on that front. So it's very adaptable to person, but it's actually forced us for the first time in our company's history to actually have to track how much vacation people are taking, for the purpose of making sure that they're taking enough. I would have never predicted that going into this environment. So, you know, making sure that you're managing your team's own kind of burnout level is very, very important during this time. Now, on the silver linings part, there's a lot of silver linings. We've been able to bring the best of our investors and the best of our advisory board members to the company much more easily during this time. I've had our different board of directors members join key meetings to present to the company on how they think the business is doing, and do things like interview them, where in the past that would have been a big lift. I would have had to fly them, and they probably would have said no, because that would have come with a lot of tax. But now you can just Zoom all around the world, right? And I can Zoom from one thing to another. I was just in a meeting right before this with a new mentor, someone who ran Priceline and was the CEO of Priceline, and a bunch of other companies. He was also the president of Citibank. And that meeting before would have been in person, and would have had the tax of me flying, you know, burning a day, you know, both there and back to have an hour-and-a-half meeting. Now that's not the expectation, right? Now I can just go straight from that and boom, jump straight into this, which is helpful. So it leads to a level of hyper efficiency that I haven't seen before. We'll be announcing pretty shortly that that we just raised a very large round of fundraising. I'd ask you to keep that very confidential. That is something that we raised, you know, over 70% of that round from right here, from me presenting to people right behind this desk and not flying anywhere. I've had friends take companies public during this period, and they've done it from right behind their desk. The whole IPO roadshow. You know, I took Bizarre Voice public, and there was a tremendous amount of travel for that, and a tremendous amount of inefficiency with that process. So you can have a lot more meetings with people than you've ever had before. I would say that my meeting count is way up during this period, because there's so little lift to have a meeting, because you can Zoom from one thing to the next. But that leads to a different level of fatigue because you don't have the natural break of getting on a plane and the natural inefficiency of all that. But the silver lining is that you can have more meetings than ever before, including with prospects and, you know, and existing customers. They're not expecting you to come on site right now. So you can really make hay from a sales perspective, and we have made hay from a sales perspective and from a customer adoption perspective, because you can have a lot more meetings than ever before without the expectation that you're going to travel. And there's only so much time in the week, and if you travel a lot of that time's burned. You know, you don't have the natural break, but you have the natural efficiency lift. So that's been overall a net positive for our business. We've also really adapted well during this time to virtual events. So one of the great fears I had coming into this period is back in March, we were going to have the most important conference of the year. It's the Gartner Data Analytics Summit that was going to be held in March. And last year, that drove the majority of our sales leads for the entire year. Okay, well this year, obviously it didn't happen and it got pushed to the fall, and then it pushed from the fall to next year. And we had, through our OKRs, we had some lead generation goals, and we ended up actually beating our lead generation goals without resetting those goals, without even having that event. Now, how's that possible? That's possible because the team, you know, I'm so proud of the team, like rapidly shifted to virtual events that attracted, you know, many hundreds of people each. And those events, we were able to have customers present much more easily because they didn't need to fly anywhere. The best way to sell new customers is to have your existing customers that are happy, you know, and we've got a very, very referenceable customer base, talk about you to everybody else. Like, as a matter of fact, that's the best marketing you can have. That's what Bazaar Voice was all about, was word of mouth. And word of mouth, if you put it to work, is your best friend. And having our existing customers, you know, join very easily in these virtual events, and having me and others interview them about how they're transforming their businesses to become much more data-driven using data.world, and how important it was during this time of COVID-19, where not just their data are siloed, but their people are siloed. That became incredibly effective at getting people to buy our solution and join these events. We also started a podcast during this period, which is Tape Live. We call it Catalog and Cocktails. It's a fun thing where we talk about enterprise data catalogs, which is our category. And we make cocktails at the same time. You would think the two would not go together at all, but it's got a cult following now, and now it's the #1 podcast on enterprise data catalogs, which is going to be a multi-billion-dollar category. We invented that during this period. You know, I give full credit to the team. We've also invented a lot of other things during this period, and a lot of these have been grassroots culturally. And as a CEO, the main thing I need to do when something is happening grassroots that is so beautiful is I need to cheer them on, right? I need to say, hey, that's awesome, and really be a participant in it. So we've had virtual talent shows. Those have been really, really well attended and really awesome. We've had Owl Talks, which is our version of TED Talks, where people give a TED-like talk on a subject they're very passionate about. Those have been extremely well attended. For our All Hands, which is quarterly, we have a weekly All Hands, but we also have a quarterly one that used to be an entire day at the Alamo Draft House, which was great because, you know, you're in person, you're having drinks and food the whole time, you watch a movie afterwards. We shifted that virtually, where, you know, we'll bring the best of cocktails made by one of our team members to people via a local business named Drop Off, which is a courier company. Deborah and I are actually investors in it, and Sean Spector is the CEO there, and a great CEO. And so we'll kind of bring the best of food and the best of cocktails and the best of gifts to people working from home, where we create that personal touch in person, and then we're all sharing it together on Zoom. Last All Hands, which was a few weeks ago, we did our first Zoom prov, which wouldn't sound like it's going to be a lot of fun, but it was an improv group, and it was actually really, really cool. That idea came from talking with lots and lots of CEOs, and I was saying, you know, I really want to keep it fresh during this period. We also, at our previous All Hands, had a video contest on who could create the funniest video and the most kind of informative on what it's like to work from home during this period. And it was hilarious. Like, some of the best videos in our company's history, you know, came out of that. And I'll never forget them. So that's been, you know, that's been pretty cool for us to have things like that come out of this period. But I would say the biggest thing culturally that's made an impact, as I mentioned, is just being able to bring our customers into more of our all hands meetings and more of our virtual events, and being able to bring our board of directors and key investors into more of those. You know, when we closed this large round of funding recently, it's largest round in our company's history, we were able to bring in some of the key people that invested. They wouldn't have traveled here for that type of meeting, but we're able to bring them in and talk about why they invested, and get everybody really pumped up. Because it's one thing for the CEO to constantly be talking about it, or the executive team. It's a whole nother thing to have someone that's completely objective from the outside, that just invested in you and has a track record of investing in so many great companies, talk about why they invested and why they think our company is really special. So those types of things have created a big lift during this period. We've also made sure to keep up with all of our just normal cultural practices. We haven't skipped a performance review process during this period. We haven't skipped, as I mentioned, a resilient teams process during this period. We haven't skipped our all hands during this period. People want stability. They want to know things can still be the same, although it is virtual, and that you're committed to your principles and your practices through that. So that's worked really well for us. But that and the fact that just a lot of transparency and a lot of communication, during this period have been really, really important. And I've been really upfront and center on tremendous number of things. Where do we stand on COVID? When do we expect to go back to the office? The answer right now is I have no idea, because we're going to be very driven by the science and protect our people. And as much as I think a lot of people in this country want to wish the virus away and wish that it never happened, it's very real. And we're not in a business where we have that pressure like a hotel business or a travel business or an airline business or a restaurant business to get back together in person. So we have the luxury of not subjecting ourselves to potential exposure to the virus. So we're choosing not to, as much as we'd like to be together. Being very upfront about that, and upfront about following the science, and waiting for drugs that are the Tamiflu of this generation that come out that make it where we can live alongside this virus without the fear of what happens if we're one of those unlucky ones that it really attacks. Really being very transparent about the financial health of our business and the state of our customers. Very transparent about our hiring plans. We haven't done a single layoff during this period, and have actually been hiring through this period, and have recently accelerated that hiring as we continue to beat our goals. But when we came into this, we stopped hiring altogether to first just stabilize and say, we don't know what's going to happen and how this is going to affect our business. And then once we started to see that it was going to affect our business in a positive way, we leaned in and started to hire more and more into that. And once we started to beat our fundraising goals and everything else, we leaned in even more. So those are some of the ideas I have on managing through this period. And I really want to, just go to Q&A, and I'd love to hear your ideas and what are 2 or 3 of the things you've done that you think have been the most effective at leading from behind these screens, during this crazy period that we're all living through, where, there's so much political noise and so much noise about the virus and so much noise about the climate and so much noise about companies that are really doing very poorly through this. Like, how have you been leading through it? I'd love to learn, a lot from you.
Brad, thank you so much. And I definitely want everyone to chip in, and you can take yourself off the speakerphone. But I did want to introduce, let Carlos, he came on board, introduce himself real quickly.
Great.
Carlos, you there? Maybe you can turn on your camera. Can you turn on your camera? Oh, you're muted. Carlos? Okay, Carlos is not responding, so Brett, back to you.
He's here in spirit.
I could start with this
Sure,
if you
please.
want.
Yeah, I'd love to hear.
This is really fascinating. Thank you so much for inviting me.
You bet.
Yeah, sure. I have worked from home always, and my first company was called Data Now, and I was actually featured in the April 1999 issue of Ladies Home Journal with my 2-year-old in the picture with us working from home, and we had a 20-person development firm, and we were all working virtually, and so over the years, that's always been my tendency, is to pull my companies back towards work at home. And then plus I watched my dad run a national sales force from our kitchen. So, that helped me too, because I grew up with it. So Kilroy Blockchain already had everybody working from home when COVID hit. It's what we had always done. And so my first concern was to make people understand how serious COVID was, because I thought, if we get sick, we're done. And half of my team is in Nepal, and they live with extended families. And I thought, man, we're just in trouble if people start getting sick, because this will never end. And so what we did, I think, worked really well. We offered a bonus for anyone who completed and got their certificate for the Johns Hopkins contact tracing course. And it was like a 7 or 8 hour commitment. And instead of me saying, no, don't do this, do this, it was, okay, here's the information. You learn it. They all love certificates, and we let them do it on company time, and then plus paid a bonus. And then Johns Hopkins also followed up with a second, more difficult course. But I think that really helped us a lot. Yeah,
that's cool. Yeah, and we've done a lot of things, like bring, for anybody that wants the office furniture that we have delivered to their home, we've done that. Paid for the delivery. For anybody, we've covered up to $500 per person for anything they want to add to their home environment to make it much more easier to work at. And I know Heather Bruner's done the same at WP Engine. I know Chris Himes has done that at Indeed. That's been helpful. I shared in the chat a podcast that I highly recommend listening to. It's the founder of Automatic, who created WordPress, talking about how they manage across so many different countries and always manage from home. My point, Karen, is that for me, it was just new, and I was not used to it. So I had a lot of fear about, well, how's this really going to work? And are really going to be effective? And, and just that fear of, like, anytime even though I've been a CEO for a long time, since I was 24 years old, 48 now, when you're used to managing in a certain way and you're used to being in an in-person environment for so long, and you've become successful as an entrepreneur that way, it gets you to be, you get very nervous about doing it a completely different way, about only doing it via computer screen, not being able to, like, take the team out and go, you know, have dinner together and talk about something really important and strategic, or, you know, all of that in-person time, you know, at an off-site, you know, and having to shift everything to behind these screens. But again, there's been a major upside in all the people that we can include at the table in those meetings that we could not have included before, because they wouldn't have done the travel for it. It just would have been too heavy of a lift. You know, we're having a strategy meeting. We're like, oh man, we'd really like to get this customer's perspective. Well, let's just invite them in and have them talk for 30 minutes about it and have them be a part of the solution with us. And they really like that. You know, so there's a lot of benefits of this medium, and the best benefits of this medium, I think, are outlined in that podcast I just shared, because, you know, that's a guy who's
Thank you.
raised $500 million for his business, has a multi-billion-dollar business, has, you know, thousands of people all over the world. Actually, you know, they work a 24/7 type shift because of the fact that they can hand off work in different time zones. So they structure pods across those time zones. I think that's fascinating.
Yeah, we run 24 hours a day. It's exhausting sometimes, you know, because if you're in charge, you still have to keep track of all of it.
Right. Yeah. So there's certain advantages that you can capitalize on in this environment. But I think after all this is said and done, I think where we've netted out as a company, if things stay true, and we've surveyed our team a lot on this front, is we'll probably move to an environment where we work this way around 3 days a week on average, and work in person around 2 days a week on average. And we'll definitely get back together for things like the quarterly all hands at the Alamo Draft House, and different like seminal events like that will definitely be done in person again. But we'll have a tremendous amount more flexibility than we had before in terms of where you work and how you get your work done. And the fact that we're OKR based, we've always been primarily measuring outcomes anyways. And if you're very outcome based, then it's very easy to tell that everybody's getting their work done, regardless of how they get it done. The method is not as important as the outcomes.
Brett, based on your experience, and by the way, Steve Harper told me to tell you hello.
Oh, he's great. Yeah, thank you.
Yes,
I'm a big Steve Harper fan.
Yeah, we just finished his new cover, so he says hello.
Oh, cool. Very cool. Yeah.
So do you see what you just described as being something, forecasting that being something that will be ubiquitous for companies similar to yours, and maybe even more expansive in the years to come?
I do think that it's going to take many years. You know, my guess is 4 to 5 years for business travel to return to the levels it was at back in February. And the reason why is that this period of, you know, containment, you know, kind of self-quarantine, you know, has been really eye-opening from the standpoint of it's made people aware that a lot of the meetings that they were traveling to before, which were just kind of social norms and expectations, probably were never necessary to actually have in person, but they were just expected because it's the way things were done. You know, there's a lot of, well, it's always been done that way. That's how, you know, I even have that bias, right? I told you that's how I became successful managing in person, and so it feels very unnatural to shift to managing like this. But you know, we've clicked and gotten the hang of it, I think. So I do think it's going to take a long time because customers and prospects are really going to ask themselves, is it really that important that they fly up here to spend that 2 hours demoing on site in whatever state it is? I do think that there will be some meetings which will, like I personally believe conferences will probably come back in force. because I think after this period's over, people are going to have so much pent up energy to reconvene in person that, you know, the great conferences for every industry, they're going to come back in force. Newer conferences will struggle a bit, but the ones that were mainstays, like in our industry, the Gartner Data Analytics Summit, I think, you know, maybe attendance in the first year after this will be 75% of what it was, but then a year later it'll be 100%, and then it'll probably grow from there. So I think those are going to come back in force, but all the one-off meetings where it's like the big pitch meeting that you go to pitch for a couple of hours, or the big training meeting where you go to train for a couple of hours, a lot of that is going to be gone for a long time, which I think is great. It's great for the environment, you know, reduces a lot of carbon. You know, planes are huge carbon producers. It's bad for a baseline of a constant focus on, are we growing GDP? Because travel is a big part of that GDP. But ultimately, you know, dollars are shifting in more efficient means. So I don't think that's such a bad thing. I do think that for the majority of tech companies, they'll operate in a hybrid mode for many years to come, maybe forever, because they've been forced into this operating mode. And coming out of it, they're going to be like, hey, you know, we still beat our goals or met our goals working that way. We had the benefit of having family around. I mean, I honestly think my nirvana would be, I mean, I can tell you right now, I'm very much missing seeing people in person. But if I really try to think about this objectively, and you know, through the surveys that we've done at our company and through the conversations I've had with other tech CEOs, I really think the nirvana is to do this, you know, 3-4 days a week. Because if you had that in-person time for those really big cultural events where you're celebrating beating your sales goal or something like that, going out to eat dinner, you know, having a big strategy discussion after your board meeting with your board of directors, you know, over dinner, you know, having those, then you have the best of both worlds. You're getting to work on a much more flexible schedule where you can be helpful around family. You ultimately actually, as I said, work more hours. You're more effective and productive overall. Our team has actually said, when we surveyed them, that 75% have said that they're as effective or more effective during this time. And it breaks out, that 75% breaks out in roughly a third, where a third say they're as productive, a third say they're more productive, and a third say they're far more productive. Out of the 25% that say they're less productive during this time, almost all of them have young kids. So that's a huge problem, is there's not this level of daycare available that was available before, which is very important. I mean, I've got a 16-year-old and a 10-year-old, a daughter and a son. They're primarily self-sufficient now, but if you had, you know, a 2-year-old, a 3-year-old, a 4-year-old in that environment, that is really hard. But you have to put yourself in the future and think about daycare's back, school's back. What did you learn during this period? I could still be highly effective at home. Now imagine working from home the majority of the time where your kids are in school. You'll be as productive as I've been during this time, right? So that's kind of their nirvana, I think. And I think it's also a nirvana that, as much as I love travel, and I truly love travel, I truly love going to different cities and, you know, hanging out with the people there and going to different restaurants and meeting in person and all that stuff. If I can be as effective with less travel, it's less stressful on my body, it's less costly for the company, it's better for the environment. Now, those are all for a very privileged position of a tech company, which is made for the digital age, right? We don't produce anything that you physically touch. We produce software, which is all virtual. Those are not the cases for a travel company, a hotelier, a airline company, et cetera. And they'll have a different baseline. You've seen them letting go of a lot of people, closing down locations, shutting down routes. Those will take a long time to come back to be to their prior levels. But I do think there's a lot of pent up demand for vacations coming out of this. And we'll see a lot of those things come roaring back in terms of the vacation travel. I just think the business travel is going to be down for a long period of time and take, 4 to 5 years to come back, because the bar to travel is going to be so high. And what's going to get us back to what it used to be is just more people in the workforce and more conferences. There's always more conferences that pop up, and there will be more reasons to travel to different gatherings and things like that coming out of this. But it'll take a long period of time, I think, to get back to that same level of travel from a business standpoint. It's my personal prediction.
But I have a question for you, or a thought. And I had my company, I grew it to about 100 people from a standing start. We've kind of focused our company around, our key pieces of it around a book that came out in the early 90s called The Great Game of Business from Jack Stack.
Oh, I love that book. I love that book. And Jack Stack is like a hero because of the way he treated all of his people there. And actually, little known story, the CEO of Kirby Lane Cafes, very good friend of mine, Mason Ayers is his name. He's won lots of awards in town, like Best CEO Award, et cetera. And he runs his business based on that book. So all the Kirby Lanes are run based on The Great Game of Business as well, with lots of transparency about their metrics and everything else.
Well, so many of the things that you mentioned seemed very connected to that book. And as we grew very rapidly in customer service and also warehouse operations, one of the things that was key was putting up a scoreboard. So all the employees could see their key metrics, how they ranked for the day or how they ranked for the week. And that scoreboard, big whiteboard, was kind of a gathering place. Matter of fact, we had to watch more closely that the employees weren't getting too competitive. We had to back off because everybody wanted to see their name at the top of the list. So in these times with your data management and your transparency and vision to OKRs, have you got some sort of a dashboard or visibility for all your employees so they can randomly check through the day or at different times? Hey, how am I doing today? Where do I stand? Without the, as you mentioned, that in-person ability to feel the stability of where they're at.
The short answer is no. They do see how the overall team is doing because of the OKRs. So every team has their own OKRs. Those are boiled up into the overall corporate OKRs. So they have that ability. We also are a big culture of the one-on-one meeting where we're constantly checking in on how can I remove obstacles for you and how are things going, from performance standpoint. So we have that signal constantly going back and forth. One of the neat things we have that is competitive that's been great is, and reinforces our values, and I did the same thing at Bazaar Voice. And Bazaar Voice, was rated the #1 company to work for when it was small, then large, or small, then medium, then large. I think it's the only company in Austin's history to win in all 3 categories, #1, as it grew. And this was a mainstay of the Bazaar Voice culture too, is we have a nomination process where the team nominates their peers for a culture award every quarter. And then as executive team, we look at all the nominations, and it's a combination of how frequently someone was nominated as well as looking at the actual content of the nomination. But they nominate them on our 5 core values and how they've become a standard bearer for a couple of those or maybe all of them. And we give equity awards based on that. And when I was doing this in person, prior to COVID, I'd give a big Ed McMahon sized check with their name on it. And, 1,000 stock options and all of this. And it was a big production. So we've continued that tradition during this time. As I said, continue all of the traditions you had before during this time, and just figure out a way to adapt them to virtual by bringing them things in person as well through delivery services and the like. So you can still bring them some of the physical touches. And that's worked really well. And those cultural awards are a bit competitive, but you're competing then on values, on people leading through values. The metrics, you know, we're metric through to the gills. We're just not metric down to that individual level on a daily basis. We are metric very much on a team basis. Win as a team is very important. And then it's obvious in some teams, like, you know, sales is the best example of this. It's constantly obvious what the sales dashboard is and how well each account executive is doing and inside salesperson. And we do at the quarterly all hands, we do show who were the top winners there, and that stokes a little bit of competitive fire, but they're seeing that every day. They are seeing that every day. It's just that, like, how do you show an engineer, for example, on a daily basis, how they're doing versus the rest of the team? You know, we're a software as a service company, and one thing that is pretty fascinating is that we have done 1,015 releases in the last 12 months. So we're in a very fast innovation cycle here, and we're competing primarily against enterprise software competitors that come out, like our two top competitors came out with 3 and 4 releases last year, where last fiscal year, when our team was smaller, we came out with 615. So we also have competitive benchmarks, right, that we're showing in terms of, we're the fastest growing company in our category. So we look at things like that, but yeah, we don't have it metric down on the individual basis by day. And it's, you know, Kirby Lane's a little bit different there because the jobs are very, you know, it's like
incremental daily.
Yeah, it's very, you know, you can look at everybody's, you know, bills from a daily standpoint and tips and everything else.
I really like your concept on focusing competition on values. I hadn't really thought about that in the past. I'm going to put some thought into that and see how to incorporate. That sounds like a wonderful idea.
Yeah, I mean, it's beautiful. I mean, you know, one way, I'll share this in the channel, but I mentioned that I wrote a book on entrepreneurship, and I came out with that book last year in August, and I gave it away for free online. So the entire book, including the foreword by one of my great mentors and investors, John Mackey, is in the book. So that's the entire book, that URL. It's all available for free online. But the way we actually formed our values is pretty cool. And we formed it completely grassroots as opposed to tops down. And so this is chapter 18 of my book, and it's called An Unusual but Beautiful Method of Forming Your Company's Values. And it's the first company I've done it this way. But you know, we have 5 core values, which all came from really just asking people what values they bring into work every day and looking for commonality in that. And you can read that chapter and see how I ran that process. So our values have been derived completely grassroots. And then to reinforce the values, people are nominating their peers on how they're living the values. And so then that reinforces more. When we do performance reviews, which are twice a year, there's a component of the performance review which is very focused on values, and we do a part of the performance review is a 360 process, and we get people in the 360 process to also comment about how people are living the values. And when people get a nomination for a culture award, even if they don't win, that goes into their performance review as well. So they actually get to see what people wrote, even if they weren't one of the winners, because there's only 2 to 3 winners per quarter. There's one for individual team member, there's one for manager, And then occasionally we'll give one for a legacy culture award for someone who's constantly been nominated but hasn't yet won, and it's like a mainstay of the culture for such a long period of time. And we want to recognize them for it. So there's a constant reinforcement of values at data.world, and there was at Bizarre Voice too. And you know, one of our values is determination, which is all around performance. So, you know, the values are, you know, not just soft. A lot of them are like really on, you know, really performance weighted. Another one of our values is passion. Like, it's very easy to perform well if you're very passionate about the cause and your work.
I steered the dragon boat once for I'm a dragon boat steers person, and I work at the festival here, and I steered for Bizarre Voices dragon boat team 1 year. They really were passionate. They really were. They were so fun. They worked together really well, and they I believe they won in their race that they were in. That's awesome. Yeah. Well, we have just as good of a culture here at data.world. It's a really awesome team that we've got. I'm really blessed to be in this team.
Rob, do you have any thoughts around manufacturing and culture right now? Oh. Can't hear you.
There you go. It's really good to hear your perspective. It was kind of cool. We, for 10 years, when I was the CEO of DMS, we had every quarter, we rented out the Alamo Draft House and had a full team event where we really talked about who the company was, what we're trying to become, and where we're heading. That was so effective. I really miss those events.
Yeah.
So, but I'll tell you just a brief story. So when I sold the company in April this was 15 months ago, 17 months ago, the company that bought us has a very different perspective on culture. So I look at it from a positive perspective. So I had a team of folks. We built a company over 10 years, and we were students of culture and leadership. I mean, I brought in speakers. We did leadership training every single week with 300 employees a week. It just was part of our DNA. And then that team, we all moved together into this organization. And this organization, you know, and I don't want to say bad things about where I am, but they just have a different perspective on culture.
Right.
You know, they don't have the same priorities. And it's interesting having the team of folks that used to be a part of DMS all come back in and say, you know, Rob, so at times we thought that what we were doing was a waste of time, a waste of money. I mean, I'm not really sure. This is all soft stuff. They're now looking at this from a different perspective and saying, oh my gosh, Rob, that really made a lot of sense. I now understand what we were doing as an organization, and I want to do it again. I mean, how do we go make that happen again?
Right.
And it's kind of interesting. The thing that over this COVID, so we sold the company. We went through a 12-month kind of struggle on culture and who the company was going to be. And finally, we all kind of gave in. Look, we got purchased. This is the way it's going to be. And then we went into COVID. And so now you've got the folks that are on the clean room floor and manufacturing product, touching product, going to the office every day. And you really have you have a lot of the folks that used to, you know, I guess roam the carpet are no longer in the office. We're not allowed to go in. And one of the things that I've found that's been the most effective, I mean, we don't use Zoom, but we use Microsoft Teams, and having these face-to-face meetings are excellent. But I try to call. I'll go through every day and I'll find one of the employees that used to work in the organization of DMS, and I'll call them and just say, "How you doing?"
That's great.
I've found
that kind of personal touch goes a long way.
I've found during COVID, I've gotten closer to a lot of these employees that I thought I was close to before.
Me too, actually. Me too.
Yeah. Really effective. I mean, it's
because it makes it so easy to kind of just jump from one thing to the next. I mean, you do have that fatigue of like, it's so many meetings and it's kind of full on like all day, you know. I mean, it's like by the end of the day, I'll have like 10, 12 Zoom meetings type of thing. Whereas in a normal work day, I probably would have had like 4 or 5 meetings because there's less, like some of it you're physically traveling to and everything else. So my meeting count has gone way up. But the thing about the thing I don't get about some companies' kind of perspective about culture is, you know, people think this is all like this soft stuff. And the reality is, like, if people bring their best selves into work and they feel very passionate about their work, and if anybody thinks just rationally about any period in their entire life where they've been there at their most productive, it's when they're passionate and driven and, you know, excited. And to not tap into that and not create an environment like that at work, you're not going to perform as well. You can't beat people into submission. And, you know, to the extent that people try to do that and try to apply military tropes, managing teams, when we're all getting free snacks and working in air-conditioned buildings most of the time, we're not on life and death situations like we are in the military. And so to kind of transplant that military leadership model into companies is just stupid, in my opinion, and completely counter to the modern work world. It makes no sense at all.
It doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
You have a team of people working for a paycheck versus working for a passion or a belief or as a team.
Right. And it's anything you do. And that is the most beautiful thing that was demonstrated by Jack Stack.
Yeah.
Because in Jack Stack's case, they literally were manufacturing super boring widgets. I mean, like, that was it. It was not like, you know, data.world, we are literally transforming the way the world interacts with data. Okay, that's pretty cool. But, you know, people that aren't into tech or aren't into data probably would think it's boring as hell. But the people in Jack Stack's company, they were literally creating widgets. And he found a way to get them to bring their best selves to work and provide them with MBA level like training for the first time in their lives, and, you know, grew them into leaders where they could manage businesses on their own, even if they hadn't even gotten a high school degree. And he brought out their best selves in an environment where, you know, it would have been any excuse to be like, well, it's just widgets. Like, who cares? It's just a widget, you know?
Yeah.
And that's the most beautiful part about the Jack Stack story, in my opinion, is that great leadership can make anything interesting if you hire the right people, have the right culture.
In manufacturing and building boring widgets, and Brad, I mean, what Brad does and what DMS did, I wouldn't call them boring widgets, but it's still building widgets. It was really exciting. Manufacturing, I find,
I'm not integrating widgets. I'm just saying that, You know, it's like that thing that, like, you know, how excited could people be about that?
Well, what I'll say about that is,
we're kind of at the, I don't want to go over too much. I did want to give Carlos an opportunity to introduce himself.
Sure.
Sure, guys. How are you? My name is Carlos Gonzalez. I was in another meeting that ended late, so sorry about that. I work for Ferrovial Construction. It's a multinational heavy civil contractor. Ferrovial Agromani is about the 6th biggest contractor in the US and 11th worldwide. And we work mainly on, like I said, very complex infrastructure. That includes, we constructed a piece of the high-speed rail in California, big concession projects like in Dallas. We have built in Dallas about $5 billion in construction. Currently, we're working on concession projects in Canada and Virginia. Again, these are very, very complex projects. They are, in essence, big size that are multi-billion-dollar in construction, and enormous amount of risks because they are design build, meaning when you give the initial price, it's a lump sum fee, taking into account all the risks that the designs and the contract call for. Okay. Well, I guess our business has not really been affected by the COVID issue. Actually, it's been flourishing. There is about 2 reasons why. The economy, the states and the federal government is pumping money to incentivize the economy by constructing highways. And second of all, when the states don't have money, Then they want to construct the project with a concession model, which that's what we do pretty much. Where the company has a very has a hefty bank account that they can finance a lot of these construction projects in exchange for collecting toll revenues on all this stuff. So right now we're extremely busy, which again, when it came to the pandemic period, we have an issue because we need to keep on working. We cannot stop producing. The clients need their work products, and we had to change virtually to a virtual situation. I used to travel a lot because I manage all the designs in the central area and west coast of this country. And I used to go to the meetings with the state, with engineers, with other contractors, with suppliers, and that stopped completely. There's no, we haven't done that since March. Actually, it was very eerie, my last flight to New York, where I was, I think, with one of my engineers and about 3 or more people in the plane, and that's about it. And I actually thought I caught the sickness when I came back because I started feeling like a sore throat, but it was allergies, actually. So,
It's typical.
So,
Glad you didn't get it.
Austin. Well,
so we have gone virtually on absolutely everything, and now we have noticed that we are a lot more productive. And like I said, I used to travel a lot. My engineers used to travel a lot. Now they don't have to, and we can very easily call for meetings, I can call somebody, how are you doing? Show me the screen, and things like that. Very, very easy, and very efficient. And I have design teams in Europe. I have them in Spain. I have them in the UK. And then I have people even in Nepal doing designs for us. And it's working much better. And I think the situation, once it goes, everything is resolved, you see a lesser amount of need to go and travel. Definitely will be down to very specific high-level meetings, but I think everybody will have a change in mind in the regarding in-person meetings. You know, it will be only for maybe promoting issues that are not resolved with previous meetings, and or just a small business development meeting. That's about it. But we are working excellent the situation with all our software virtual meetings, and I don't think we're going to change for the near future.
Thank you, Carlos. I'm so glad you came, and thank you to all of our new people, the people that came for the first time today: Rob and Carlos and Mac and Karen and Brett, of course. I did want to remind everybody that we're having the mastermind on the 15th. It'll be from 12 to 1:30, so it's a little bit longer. Everybody gets about 10 minutes to kind of talk about 10 minutes to kind of talk about, you know, their challenges and their solutions, and, you know, just basically just kind of dive in deeper and get to know each other better. So would love to have you come to that. Brett, do you have any final thoughts for us before we close?
No, I think this is a good discussion, and thanks for everybody's questions. And just remember that as a leader, this is the time for you to lean in more than ever before. So if you're getting frustrated or concerned or whatever, like, you know, try to channel that energy or that fear into spending more time with your customers, spending more time with your team, bringing the best of, you know, your board and your investors into the meetings, you know, leveraging this medium to be what it can be, which is a time to actually bring people closer in some ways, like was said earlier, where, you know, you can actually spend more time with your key employees if you're doing it right.
Fantastic. Listen, if anybody would like to share their contact information, why don't you do it right now if you haven't already done it. Brett, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us. I've always admired so much all the work you've done in culture. You're like the culture king, so love that about you. And thank you so much. And
well, thanks a lot, everybody. Yeah, have a great day and good luck with your businesses.
Bye.
Thank you.